To our special on cultural frontiers. Cultural frontiers when two different cultures meet with their contrasting ways of existing and thinking, often resulting in conflict.
Through a comparative study of texts that explore the effects of cultural frontiers, several objective concepts are apparent across history.
These include that individuals placed between two contrasting communities are often alienated due to cultural clashes, and that these frontiers can only be overcome with the resolution of systemic failings that allow discrimination within society.
And contemporary film Mystery Road 2014 illustrates the intrinsic discrimination and cultural isolation felt by Indigenous Australians, creating a clear divide between them and the white community. He shines a light on the recent contextual clashes between the Australian justice system and Indigenous youth due to institutionalised racism. Further, he leads upon his own experiences of racial injustice as an Indigenous child growing up in Australia throughout the 80s and 90s in the racially profiled area known as Vegemite Village.
Preaching a similar message of change to seize racial prejudice in the American context, Alan Parker's historical fiction film Mississippi Burning 1988 explores the ingrained discrimination against African Americans within the southern states, derived from the legacy of the Jim Crow laws that created a gulf between black and white communities. Further, it highlights the need for society-wide intervention to implement and sustain civil progression that bridges the gap between both racial groups, thus reflecting the 1980s contextual upheaval due to the government intervention seen in the war on drugs and a shift within America towards wider civil rights.
Study of the films Mississippi Burning and Mystery Road yields essential observations about how the collisions of two cultures creates power imbalances within society that morph into entrenched discriminatory structures.
Further, it suggests the futility of change when institutions are apathetic to systemic issues that drive cultural frontiers.
From the outset, Sem portrays Indigenous Australians as second-class citizens. The negligent attitude shown by the white police officers is in stark contrast to that of Indigenous Officer J, pitched by Sen as an outsider who exists between the communities. The extent of existing police bias is highlighted by Sen's setting at Massacre Creek, an intentionally confronting place of brutal murder symbolic of historical atrocities committed against Indigenous Australians. Jono's apathetic tone when answering Jay's initial inquiries conveys his disregard for Julie's death and is emblematic of the contemporary struggle by Indigenous Australians to gain equal treatment from authority. Furthermore, the positioning and proxemics for squatting Jay place him closer in level to Julie, juxtaposes genuine concern against the apathy of his fellow police officer. His positioning highlights how Jay's pursuit of justice for Julie sets him alone in a system that fails to protect Indigenous individuals.
In Parker's bar scene, the open hostility to Detective Anderson as he enters the Clan bar portrays him as an outsider, similarly caught between an entitled police force and seeking justice for the African American community. The KKK's violent dialogue spoken in the presence of a police deputy illustrates law enforcement's contempt towards the black community. The juxtaposition between the overt discrimination and Anderson's genuine empathy depicts a clash between the two. Further, the setting of the bar above the street positions the KKK members above the town, symbolizing the uneven power dynamic. Reflecting the 1960s racial prejudice, the justice system empowers the group to act outside the law, by releasing crimes that affect the white community only. Use of a wide shot to show distal proximity between him and the KKK members further highlights Anderson's isolation.
Graphic shootout scene heralds violence as a common but often flawed mechanism to bring about systemic change. Despite Pete's death and the apparent victory it symbolized, the scratch marks on the necklace found in the drug dealer's car reminds of Julie's brutal rape and murder, providing a lasting image of systemic injustice faced by Indigenous Australians in contemporary society. Further, the progress offered by Jono's apparent siding with Jay is diminished by his ambiguous motives, which could merely be to deflect from his own corruption. Stark contrast this ending to the conventional Western trope happy endings raises awareness and consideration among white Australians daily challenges faced by Indigenous Australians. Thus, Sen encourages the political pressure from all corners of society necessary to enact lasting change.
Parker's court scene further illustrates how racial frontiers can be overcome by collective acceptance, but are impeded by discriminatory structures. The significance of this cooperation is portrayed when the FBI and the African American boy drive together to identify the assailants, using the box as a visual symbol of the fear felt within the black community. Conversely, the scene further exemplifies the repercussions when this cooperative resolution is impeded, as seen when the judge suspends the KKK sentences. Parker portrays with a handheld shot of the riot by black individuals, jump cutting to an establishing shot of the KKK burning a black residence, to depict the cyclical violence created by cultural frontiers that are not resolved due to systemic bias.
Both films investigate cultural frontiers through racial clashes within society.
However, they address these issues through diverse thematic representations due to their unique context.